When we last left off, the meta had just been equalized to an extent. Star Seraph Dark Lords had taken a heavy hit with the nerfs to See You Later, removing their key skill, Desperado had been removed from the meta with changes to Master of Destiny, and Balance was heavily nerfed to where Noble Knights could no longer operate with the skill. The most prevalent deck though, Onomat, had not been touched on this last update, leaving an open meta for the deck to rise into and conquer. We now continue our look back on Konami's initial venture into the mobile market with Yu-Gi-Oh!, its ups and downs, and its intricate and ever-evolving metagame. Sign of Harpies was the fourth mini-box of the Zexal Era, released on March 31st, 2021. This set would mark one of the most impactful releases of the era, bringing a major wave of support to Harpy ladies, giving them a massive boost into the meta. Harpies received Channeler, who special summoned another Harpy from deck by discarding a Harpy card, Perfumer, who searched a card that mentioned Harpy Lady Sisters from deck to hand on summon, Harpist, who searches a Harpy Lady in the end phase if she was sent to grave that turn, and their boss monster Cyber / Harpy Lady, who could be summoned using any Harpy Lady as a tuner, and bounce monsters on the field to hand if a spell or trap is activated while she's on the field. They also received Hysteric Sign, who searched for Elegant Egotist when activated, or 3 Harpies in the end phase when sent from hand or field to grave, only able to use one of those effects a turn. Thanks to my skill Harpies Hunting Ground starting you with a copy of the field spell in play, Harpies were able to play both going first and second, commonly setting up a board of Cyber / and back row going first, and able to chew through back row with Hunting Ground going second. This deck would be a mainstay of practically the rest of the Zexal era, and with consistent lines it's not hard to see why. The other major archetype released here was FA, a series of machines that aimed to modulate their levels to gain new effects, most specifically in Hang On Mock, who gained the ability to banish anything sent to the opponent's grave while it's level 7 or higher, in addition to being immune to monster effects of a lower level or rank than its own, gaining 300 attack per level. The FAs had absolutely no impact in the TCG, so it was initially expected that they wouldn't do well in Duel Links either, but the issue lied in the skill Level Augmentation. Because you could permanently increase a monster's level by the level of one in hand, Hang On Mock became one of the most annoying threats in the format, being combined with Dark Lords to form the deck known as Car Lords, which aimed to use the resource engine of Dark Lords in combination with Hang On Mock being augmented with a Dark Lord's level, standardly sitting at any level between 11 and 14 after being augmented. Other powerful cards from the set include Blade Armor Ninja, who gave level 4 warrior strategies a double attacking option, Dracosac, which was the first viable rank 7, able to summon 2 tokens and use them once per turn to destroy cards on field, Emerald, which gave all rank 4 decks recursion, Crimson Armor Ninja, another staple to add to the rank 5 pool, and Lightning Vortex, the first real board clear option the game had as a staple. Vortex specifically would go on to shift Blue Eyes' position in the meta a bit, as you now had to preemptively fire your Spirit Dragon tag out if you wanted to be immune to the board wipe spell, but doing so meant you lost your Spirit Dragon to gate that turn, causing a bit of a mind game with Blue Eyes players on whether or not the opponent had Vortex. While this set did greatly impact the long-term meta of the game, this wouldn't be obvious at first, as a couple of decks from earlier in the era were still in highly dominant positions, which would be on full display a week later with the KC Cup. The third KC Cup of the Zexal era ran from April 6th through the 18th of 2021. Decks that claimed 1 or 2 top spots, but not a majority of the top 100, included Blackwings, Car Lords, Hero, Lunalight, Ritual Beast, Shiranui, Stromberg, and Water Exceed. In 9th place with 3 top spots was Triamid, mostly still using the skill Balance to ensure openings with a monster and field spell, with the one exception of the single list using Light Barrier instead to guarantee a field spell on the field for your Triamid monster effects, freeing up the ability to use effects on your first turn. In 8th with 5 top spots was Harpy, showing the consistency of the deck out the gate. Harpy's main issue at the time was the prevalence of Book of Moon in the format, meaning going second, normal summoning Channeler into a Book of Moon usually spelled the end of your turn, which was an issue considering the top 2 decks of the time. A point of note here was that Harpy was still missing one of the most important pieces of the deck, being Harpy Oracle, as this KC Cup took place directly before it would be released in an unlock event, meaning that for this KC Cup specifically, Harpy was playing with a handicap. In 7th with 5 top spots was TG, seeing a major split in the way to play the deck. The main strategy split was between a Synchro Toolbox strategy with Flight Control, able to handpick your lines, or a Defend the Tower style deck with Set Delta Excel, which made accessing Assault Halberd easy to achieve. In 6 with 6 top spots was Thunder Dragon. At this stage, Thunder Dragon hadn't changed much since the last time we saw it, still using a combination of Aloof Lupine and Raiden to start lines using Levianeer to end games quickly. Tied for 4th with 7 spots each was Cyber Dragon and Blue Eyes. Cyber Dragon's game plan has yet to change, so we'll move right on to Blue Eyes. Blue Eyes was still mostly following the same game plan as before, but was now seeing more diversity in their trap lineup, playing a variety of options between counter traps like Divine Wrath and Providence, survivability like Hallowed Life Barrier, and targeted removal like Raigeki Break, Karma Cut, and even one case of Treacherous Trap Hole. In 3rd place, and a bit of a shock to most, was Evil Eye. Evil Eye had a little trick up its sleeve in this format with the skill Titan Showdown, which made whichever player had the higher life point count take double damage. Since Evil Eye could reduce its life points easily, putting 2 level 3s on the board to make Nightmare Shark actually represented lethal in most game states, allowing the deck to perform exceptionally well. In 2nd place, with 18 top spots overall, was Star Seraph Dark Lords. This might seem odd, as the skill that made them so powerful, See You Later, was nerfed to be completely unplayable with the deck as it stood, but now the deck had a new, arguably more powerful tool to play with. The deck had gained Hang On Mock, and with the ability to drop a one-sided macro lock at will thanks to the consistency of the Star Seraph and Dark Lord engines, the deck performed exceptionally well. Level Augmentation was the skill that enabled all of this, and it was very clearly not intended to have this kind of effect, leading many of the community to call out for the skill's adjustment. Beyond this, many had also just opted to use the skill Destiny Draw and no Hang On Mock, as the 1000 life point payments easily triggered the skill. Zeta would take 1st place in this KC Cup using a Destiny Draw Star-Lords list and nothing else, proving the deck's dominance in the meta. In 1st place, with 20 top spots overall, was Onomat. The fact that the deck essentially could not brick because of the skill allowing you to handcraft whichever combo you wanted led to the most powerful deck in the format, able to make heavy negate boards going 1st or OTK boards going 2nd, as the power of selecting any 2 Onomat monsters to swap into your hand essentially let you do whatever you wanted. Many of these problem decks would be addressed on the next balance update, but for the time being, all eyes were turned to the next main box to shake up the meta landscape. Eternal Stream was the 5th main box of the Zexal Era, released on April 30th, 2021. This particular main box was extremely hyped on initial reveal thanks to the inclusion of Fire Formation Tenki, one of the best search cards in the game alongside its archetype of Fire Fist, a series of Fire Beast Warrior monsters whose effects revolve around the Fire Formation spells and traps. Fire Fists, however, wouldn't have staying power in this established meta of Onomat and Harpy, but Tenki would instantly find a home in rogue level Fire Kings, boosting the deck back up into the meta in a major way, giving a search card for Arvata and Barong, allowing the deck to compete with Onomat and Harpy like it wasn't able to before. It was also set to boost Lunalight significantly, but we'll discuss that in a minute. Dream Mirror held potential as well through their rotation of light and dark monsters between their 2 field spells, Terror and Joy, but overall lacked the necessary consistency to be relevant. Dark World finally received their boss monster, Grapha, who destroys a card on field when discarded and can be revived by bouncing a Dark World on field to hand. This could also be enabled by Charge into a Dark World, which revived a level 4 or lower Fiend and then discarded one, allowing you to put a monster on field to bounce with Grapha on the board, then discard the Grapha. If these had released with one of the first 3 waves of Dark World support, it might have been impactful, but the issue stood that this was Dark World's 4th wave of main box support, not only making the deck insanely expensive to purchase, but also far beyond the point of relevance, as Grapha was not able to compete with the current meta's inboards. Lastly, for the archetypes, UA received Powered Jersey, an equipped spell that boosts a monster's attack by 1000 and lets it deal double damage, and Signing Deal, which special summons a UA from deck but drops your life points by its level. These 2 cards would enable an OTK strategy from UA, able to rapidly put out an insane amount of damage in a single turn going 2nd, and able to easily trigger life point related skills with Signing Deal going 1st, leading to a rogue level success for the deck. Other notable cards here included Dark Ruler No More, a powerful board negate in the TCG that saw no relevant play in Duel Links, Heroic Champion Excalibur, a 4000 attack rank 4 accessible for warrior strategies, and Full Armored Black Ray Lancer, which found usage in Water Exceed thanks to Bahamut Shark being able to summon a monster it can overlay onto. Overall, Eternal Stream meta-wise only brought a couple of meta-relevant cards, but would not be the only change for the next month, as the next balance update would be released just over a week later to complement this release. The May 2021 balance update went into effect on May 10th, 2021, aimed to answer some of the lingering meta issues from the last KC Cup, specifically in a couple of unintended interactions between cards and skills in the meta. Starting with skills, Check Out My Fusions could now be used in the turn by returning a card to deck rather than replacing the draw, also now twice per duel, and Pathway to Chaos could now change a normal monster for no discard cost, being the only 2 skill buffs this patch. For nerfs, level duplication, augmentation, and reduction now all had a life point loss requirement, directly aimed at card lords abusing augmentation to make Hang On Mock an unaffected Dark Law effect, effectively killing the strategy. Titan's Showdown now only works if you control a dinosaur monster, aimed at stopping Evil Eye from abusing its interaction with Nightmare Shark for OTKs. And lastly, a rework was put in for Automata play, making it twice per duel instead of once, but only making it able to replace 1 card in hand. This change, while seeming like a nerf at first glance, may have arguably been a buff, as now, when going first, an Automat player could specifically make a turn 1 board and still have a usage of the skill for the following turn to search a follow-up play. From this change, Automat would slowly rise into a dominant position over the next few months, being the true start of one of the most infamously powerful decks in Duel Links' history. Though this rise would be a consistent slow burn of sorts, as for most of its rise it wasn't necessarily the best deck, just one of the most consistently powerful. Card changes wise, Blue Eyes would be heavily nerfed with Azure Eyes and Melody both being moved to 1. Melody was only available at 1 copy at the time, but this change made it to where you could not play Melody with one of the most important pieces of the Blue Eyes end board, forcing players to choose between the two. Cyber Dragon finally took a relevant hit with Storm being put to 1 and Cybernetic Fusion support to 2, the latter of which now shared a slot with Cybernetic Overflow. Storm was hit because of its interactions with Overflow, providing serious amounts of back row destruction and searching ability for Cyber Dragon decks, and the latter due to its interactions with Cyber Dragon's main skill, Cyber Style, which puts your life points at the necessary level to OTK. Dragoonity would have an adjustment to their previous hits, moving Ascalon to 2 and removing Senatus from the list, specifically aimed at pushing players off of using Hey True Nade in the deck. Speaking of which, Automat would take a minor hit here with Gakaga's sister moving to 2, but with the recent skill changes this would not slow them down in the slightest outside of cutting them off of staple limit 2s to a degree. Dark Lord would be almost completely culled here, seeing Star Seraph Sovereignty and Sanctified Dark Lord being put to 2, matching the previous changes to Contact and Ixchel, and marking the official end of Dark Lord's usage in competitive play. Lastly, Lunalights would see Yellow Martin and Emerald Bird put to 3, not so much as a response to the meta presence, which was there, but instead as a reaction to releasing Tenki into the meta. Lunalights were already starting to perform in the meta thanks to their ability to quickly push damage in ways not easily answerable, and Tenki being added to the mix would give the deck effectively 9 copies of their best cards. So limiting the 2 best monsters to 3 hampered that a little, effectively leaving the deck in the same spot it was before Tenki. These changes would be felt immediately in the meta, as many of the meta players up until now were either effectively removed from the meta or given new life without major threats present, setting the stage for the next big meta shakeup later the same month. Stardust Nexus was the 13th Structure Deck EX, released on May 19th, 2021. This particular structure deck not only came with new cards for Yusei's junk strategy, but also with 2 new skills for both Yusei and Jack to enable their upgraded boss monster synchros. Yusei received Shooting Star Road, which started the duel with Junk Converter in the grave and allowed him to summon Formula Synchron from the extra deck when Stardust Dragon was on the field, enabling easy access to his new boss monster, which was given to all players at the time for free, Shooting Star Dragon, a level 10 synchro that could attack up to 5 times in a turn, depending on reveals for its effect, could negate an effect that destroyed cards on field once per turn, and could banish itself until the end of the turn to negate a declared attack. Jack on the other hand received Demon's Resonance, which could swap a Resonator monster in hand for any other level 4 or lower monster in deck, unable to use that card's effect that turn, but notably had a lock to Dragon and Fiend synchro monsters in the extra deck. On initial reveal, Yusei's skill seemed far superior to Jack's, but that was also mostly due to the lack of good Resonator cards in the game on initial release, while Yusei had most of the entire Stardust Nexus structure deck of support. Included in the deck were Junk Converter, which could be discarded with any tuner to search for a Synchron monster in deck, and if used as material for Synchro Summon, special summon a tuner from grave, effectively making it and any other tuner in hand an instant Shooting Star Dragon using Yusei's new skill and Junk Synchron Search. Synchro Chase, which makes your Synchro Summons unrespondable and can revive a material used for a Warrior, Synchron, or Stardust Synchro monster, and Formula Synchron, a level 2 Synchro tuner that enables Excel Synchros, otherwise known as Synchros made using other Synchros. Also included here were reprints of Junk Synchron, Junk Warrior, Quick Draw Synchron, and a new alternate art version of Stardust Dragon, making the deck's core easily accessible. All of these changes would be felt in the meta with the next mini-box release, just not in the way initially expected. But before that, there was a new character release that would attempt to set up a duel between Synchros and the machines. Beginning on May 19th, 2021, Raid Duel, Fear the Mech Lord Emperor would bring Primo, the embodiment of despair, to Duel Links. Primo's strategy was focused around the Mech Lord monsters, a series of machines that specifically countered out Synchro monsters with their effects, which was highlighted by the boss monster Mech Lord Emperor Weisel, who could be special summoned from the hand when a monster you control is destroyed by card effect, could steal a Synchro from the opponent to equip onto itself to gain its attack, and can negate a spell once per turn. Weisel would see minor experimentation in Desperado decks at the time, but no long-term success, as for it to be relevant, most players would have to be on Synchro strategies. But with Onomat as a major threat in the meta, there was a good chance that you'd not see your opponent play a Synchro in any given game. This event would be accented by the mini-box release just a week later, where Mech Lord would gain further support. The King of Vermillion was the 5th mini-box of the Zexal Era, released on May 27th, 2021. This set would bring many follow-up pieces to the Stardust Nexus structure deck and the Primo Unlock event released earlier in the month, focused primarily on Resonator support for Jack Atlas's new skill. This set would include Crimson Resonator, who could special summon itself from hand if you controlled no monsters, and could special summon another Resonator from deck if it was on field with a Dark Dragon Synchro, and Resonator Call, which could add any Resonator from deck to hand. This would pair nicely with the previously released Red Resonator, the new Card Trader card Wandering Keen Wildwind, which could be special summoned if you controlled a Resonator monster and whose summoning condition was not in conflict with Jack's skill, and the previous ranked dual reward Red Rising Dragon, who revived a Resonator on summon to form the backbone of the deck Resonators, which could quickly and effectively churn out monsters like Dark End Dragon, Infernity Doom Dragon, Red Dragon Archfiend, and the new boss monster of the set, Red Nova Dragon, which gained 500 attack for each tuner in grave, can't be destroyed by card effect, and can banish itself until the end phase to negate an attack, although very few would actually play Red Nova at first. Resonator would move from here to become one of the best decks of the upcoming meta, showing dominance on the ladder, able to make large threats and recover massive amounts of life points thanks to Red Resonator's effect on special summon. Mech Lord would receive Weisel for use outside of Primo's skill, as well as the Mech Lord army pieces, but none of these would be successful in the meta at the time. Other notable cards included TG Wonder Magician, allowing the card to be used outside of set Delta XL, Ally of Justice Catastor, a powerful level 5 synchro that destroyed any non-dark monster it battled, Blackwing Armor Master, a level 7 synchro for the mostly irrelevant Blackwing deck, and Tuning, a spell that received an insane amount of hype on initial release only to completely flop in the overall meta compared to Resonators. This set would completely upend what the meta looked like as we approached the KCGT Prelims the following week, setting the stage for this year's World Championship stand-in. The KCGT Preliminary Tournament was held from May 31st through June 13th of 2021, being the preliminary tournament for this year's World Championship stand-in, the KCGT main event, which was comprised of the top 100 players from this tournament. Decks that had one or two top spots, but no major representation overall, included Blackwings, Crystron, Fire King, Goki, Magnet Warriors, Megalith, Ritual Beast, and Yosenju. Tied for 11th place with 3 top spots overall were Evil Eye, Water Exceed, and Witchcrafter. Water Exceed and Witchcrafter had made very little changes to their overall game plan, with the most important change being the inclusion of full armored Black Ray Lancer and Water Exceed, able to be overlaid onto a rank 3 summoned by a Bahamut Shark. Evil Eye did have a major change though, being the shifting of its skill from the now nerfed Titan Showdown to level tuning, which allowed the deck, once its life points were low enough, to make its monsters level 4 for easy access to Utopia Ray for a quick finish. In 10th place, with 4 unique tops, were hero variants. 3 of these were the standard hero deck that we've seen up until now, cycling through darks and mass changes to close out games. But the 4th was something new to the meta, being Wounded Hero, a deck that utilized the skill of the same name to special summon a hero from deck with attack less than or equal to the damage you've taken that game. This skill, combined with Battle and Boxer Veil, enabled a rank 4 and masked hero game plan that could quickly close out games on a dime, especially with the new rank 4 heroic champion Excalibur. In 9th place, with 5 top spots, was Shiranui, mostly seeing the continued use of Endless Trap Hell variants, with no real changes to the deck overall. Tied for 7th with 6 top spots overall were Lunalight and Tech Genis. Fire Formation Tenki had done a lot of good for Lunalights, and even with the hits it received in compensation for Tenki's release, the deck was in an overall better place because Tenki could be used to grab whichever pieces needed to build your board. Tech Genis had mostly solidified builds to be the Flight Control variant, able to build hand-tailored boards to create either awkward situations to play into or break established boards. In 6th, with 7 top spots, was Triamid, taking strong advantage of the current meta landscape to play mind games with the opponent. Most players on Triamid were playing the skill Harpies Hunting Ground to trick the opponent into thinking they were on the popular Harpy deck, when in reality it was being used as a way to trigger their Triamid effects with a field spell already active, taking many games with that advantage. In 5th, with 10 top spots overall, was the newly released Resonator, able to win games off its interaction setups on the first turn with Doom Caliber Knight, which didn't negate your effects if you searched it with the skill Solemn Scolding, whose life point requirement didn't matter in a deck where you commonly had 6,000 plus life points, and various tech cards to ensure playlines connected, such as a Mono Iwado to turn off monster effects, and even some players using Obelisk the Tormentor, as you commonly had boards filled with monsters without using your normal summon. In 4th, with 11 top spots, was Onomat, seemingly more competent than before. The skill change to Onomata Play had made the deck able to play a stronger going first game than it could back when you had to perform both searches at once, making its overall consistency stronger. The hit to Gagaga Sister made very little difference as you could still play her at just 1 copy to search with the skill, only really affecting how many copies of Hey Trunade or Treacherous Trap Hole you could play in the deck. In 3rd, with 13 top spots, was Cyber Dragon. Citra had once again been seemingly unaffected by the nerfs received, as the deck was still able to consistently drop life points to use the skill thanks to cards like Cosmic Cyclone and Herald of the Abyss. And with Cyberload Fusion and Fusion Gate still being unhindered, the deck was able to churn out games at over a 50% win rate to gain points. Act was able to take first place in this KC Cup using only Cyber Dragon, as he had standardly made top 10 in the previous KC Cups with just that deck, being one of the most consistent Cyber Dragon players in the game. In 2nd place with 14 top spots was Thunder Dragon. With the nerfs to Dark Lords, Thunder Dragon was able to reclaim its dominant position in the meta, still using its game plan of Raiden plus Aloof Lupine to start playlines. In 1st place, with 16 top spots overall, was Harpy. With the addition of Harpy Oracle to the deck, Harpies took their dominant position in the meta thanks to their swarming capability, the skill Harpy's Hunting Ground forcing out back row early, and their newly gained follow-up potential with Oracle's Recycle ability. Most builds were now on at least 2 copies of Swallow Nest 2, as a way for them to dodge out the silver bullet that was Book of Moon, able to more reliably trigger either Channeler or Elegant Egotist. With Harpy's newfound top position, most players looked to see if any new Resonator level decks could be added to the game to shake up the meta again, as the consistent players of Harpy and Onomat were starting to gain a serious foothold in the meta, and it would take a new dominant strategy to unseat them. Rise of Gaia was the 14th Structure Deck EX, released on June 16, 2021. Similarly to Stardust Nexus, Rise of Gaia was not released on its own, as the new skill, the Dragon Knight's Path, was released at the same time, which allowed the player to return a card from hand to deck to activate Galloping Gaia directly from deck, which enabled the new Gaia strategy's main playline. Opening a hand with either Curse of Dragonfire or Gaia the Magical Knight would allow the player to search for the other piece, enabling the summon of Magical Knight, who could then special summon Curse of Dragonfire from hand, allowing the quick fusion summon of their boss monster Gaia the Magical Knight of Dragons, which could drop its attack by 2600 to destroy a card on field. In addition, if it destroyed a monster in battle, it gained 2600 attack, allowing the additional use of its pop effect. Going first, this was a powerful effect to get onto the board, made even more consistent by Gateway to Chaos, which could search for Gaia the Magical Knight on activation, then be immediately replaced with Galloping Gaia using the skill. In addition, because Magical Knight of Dragons was a Dragon-type monster, additional copies could be summoned by using Dragon's Mirror, and its attack reduction could be reset by either Book of Moon, Forbidden Chalice, or by Gaia Origins effect Engrave. This series of factors in its favor led to the immediate popularity and success of Gaia as a new threat in the meta with this release, also further increasing the popularity of Book of Moon in the meta, as it was one of the main counters to the deck, as if you flipped Dragonfire face down before it could fuse, that would usually be enough to stop a playline with the exception of Dragon's Mirror openings. This would once again bring a meta shift into the picture, allowing Gaia to see consistent success in the meta, but not a dominant position. This would lead into the next character unlock 2 weeks later. Beginning on June 29, 2021, Ray Duel Giant Grinder would bring Quattro, the Number Hunter, to Duel Links. Quattro's main strategy was focused around the Gimmick Puppets, a series of level and rank 8 monsters that focus on swarming and spamming out rank 8s to close out the game with their high power levels. Quattro enabled this well with his skill Relinquished Puppet, which allowed him to send a Gimmick Puppet from deck to grave to summon Destroy, which could pop itself to summon up to 2 Gimmick Puppets in hand. This skill and strategy would be brought more into context with the next main box release the very next day. Darkness Gimmick was the 6th and final main box of the Zexal Era, released on June 30th, 2021. That statement might seem a bit weird at first glance, as usually there's a box released every month with the Era updates happening in September, meaning under normal circumstances there should be at least one more main box in the Era, but the time frame we're about to cover is one of the most dull in the game's entire history. After Darkness Gimmick, there would be no new non-selection box for 2 months, with the next mini box being the last box of the Era, being the longest drought of box releases in the game's history. With that said, Darkness Gimmick would bring support to a few different strategies, starting with the headlining archetype of Gimmick Puppets. Some of the key monsters for the archetype released here included Dreary Doll, being the main target to dump with Quattro's skill, able to revive itself by banishing a Gimmick Puppet in grave, Bisque Doll, able to summon herself by discarding a Gimmick Puppet and able to banish herself from grave to make Gimmick Puppets untargetable that turn, Terror Baby, able to special summon a Gimmick Puppet from grave on normal summon, and able to banish itself from grave to make your Gimmick Puppet's effects unrespondable that turn, Gigantus Doll, a rank 4 that can detach 2 materials to steal 2 monsters from the opponent, then contribute itself to make all monsters you control level 8 that turn, and their boss monster Giant Grinder, a rank 8 that can destroy a special summon monster on the opponent's field, and then burn them for half of its attack if it was an Exceed. Gimmick Puppets would see experimentation and minor success on the latter, but practically none of it was meta viable as a whole. Arguably much more impactful was the new Vampire support, specifically in Duke, who revived a vampire on normal summon and ripped a card from the opponent's deck on special summon, and Awakening, which special summoned a vampire directly from deck, both of which would boost Vampire into a rogue level contender in the metagame, seeing minor success. However, the most impactful release here was without question Inzectors, and no, that is not a joke. While Inzectors may have finally gained their primary playmaker in Dragonfly, that's not the reason they were impactful. Rather, they were impactful for the release of their rank 6 Exabeetle. This card wasn't even really used for its effect, rather for what it was, a generic rank 6 insect, meaning that Onomat now had an Exceed it could use to get the Digital Bug Rhinoceros on the first turn, giving them a non-targeting monster destruction that could be made going first. This one release was the straw that broke the camel's back, so to speak, and off of this, Onomat would rapidly become the dominant Tier 0 strategy most remember it as, able to make a board of devastating interactions going first or OTK your opponent going second. Between the content drought and this, Duel Links as a whole took a massive blow to its community and longevity, and this wouldn't be the last time over the course of the next year that this would happen, but this particular hit would begin what many consider to be the eventual downfall of the game as a whole. Other notable cards released here were Jelly Cannon, a trap that spins a monster back to deck when attack is declared, Grand Mole, who can bounce itself and whatever it battles back to hand, and Smashing Ground, which destroys the highest defense monster the opponent controls. Overall, Darkness Gimmick and the surrounding circumstances of its release would do irreparable harm to the game as a whole, but it wasn't all doom and gloom. Arguably the most overdue change to the ban list ever made happened directly after, and many were excited for the change it brought. The July 2021 balance update took effect on July 9th of 2021, and only one card was moved to a more restrictive status. Hey Trunade was completely banned from play, and with its death the community cheered, as Trunade was one of two cards that caused almost every deck to have some kind of a limit 2 on their cards to prevent its use, with the other being Treacherous Trap Hole. With its banning, Ascalon, Dakini, Assault Armor, and Dyna were all released from the list, as all had either been made irrelevant in the meta, or were only on the list due to their deck's interactions with Trunade. In addition to this, a change was made so that any card from a box that gets banned can be exchanged for any other card of its rarity from the set it came from. On top of that, Hey Trunade was removed from the Selection Mini Box Volume 2 moving forward, and was replaced with Powered-in Zektron to prevent a banned card from being in a high rarity set. This would lead into the Tier 0 format of Onomat, showing absolute dominance over everything, leading to the next character unlock event almost a month later to maybe break it up a little. Beginning July 29th, 2021, DD Castle Supreme King Rises would bring Supreme King Jaden to Duel Links. This was directly linked with the new Structure Deck EX Evil Domination, the 15th Structure Deck EX, released 2 days later, which provided most of the cards needed to play his strategies. Supreme King Jaden's primary strategy revolved around the evil heroes, primarily in his skills Domination of Darkness, which allowed you to reveal an evil hero in extra deck to load its materials into the graveyard for free, allowing easy access with Dark Calling, and the skill Sinister Calling, which let you discard an evil hero to either add a Dark Fusion or Dark Calling from deck to hand, or place a Sinister Necrom into the graveyard. The latter skill was primarily used to enable evil hero Malicious Fiend, a fusion of Malicious Edge and a level 6 or higher Fiend, usually a second copy of Edge, who forces the opponent into attack position and they must attack if able. The issue here is that this effect is completely avoidable by simply not entering the battle phase, making most of the power of evil heroes for the time being completely irrelevant. Even still, the deck would see rogue level success thanks to Mask Change providing access to Anki and Diane for your evil hero pieces. This would also be completely overshadowed by a Selection Mini Box released the same day. Selection Box Mini Volume 3 was the 7th overall Selection Box, released July 31st, 2021. This box, being released into Onomat Tier 0 meta, was expected to bring something relevant to break up the increasingly stale meta, but instead brought only a couple of new cards, only maybe one of which was relevant. The Selection Box brought Breakthrough Skill, which can negate a monster's effect on field and can be banished from grave to do the same during your turn. Red Eye's Fang with Chain, a trap that allowed Red Eye's decks to steal opponents' monsters. Red Eye's Flare Metal Dragon, a rank 7 exceed that burns the opponent when they use card or effects. Soul Taker, a targeted destruction spell that gives the opponent life points, notable for making some monsters miss timing on destruction. And Volcanic Queen, which contribute an opponent's monster to be special summoned to the opponent's field, locking your normal summon for that turn. All in all, the only card here that would make any kind of waves was Breakthrough Skill, seeing some play in decks of the era, but not an overwhelming amount due to its Selection Box status and a free-to-play alternative in Forbidden Chalice being available. Although those who did pick it up would have more flexibility with it over Chalice, as it let you stop an effect on the opponent's turn, then turn off a piece of interaction on your turn. This would lead into yet another balance update to try and break up the Tier 0 meta before the KCGT Championships began a week later. The August 2021 balance update went into effect August 6, 2021, being considered an emergency hit before Worlds to try and break up the stale meta. Gaia Head and Digital Bug Rhinoceros were both hit to 2, meaning that both Head and Sister were at 2, making it impossible to play Rhinoceros in Onomat without sacrificing a major play line. This hit did make it harder to make an unbreakable turn 1 board, but it also didn't change anything about the pre-Exabeetle deck, as most players were already on one copy of Gaia Head anyways. This hit was entirely to set up the meta for the KCGT Championship, which took place 3 weeks later. The KCGT Championship 2021 took place on August 28, 2021, comprised of the top 16 players from the Stage 1 play-in on July 17th. In the top 16, players had to bring 3 decks with different skills, only 3 copies of a card across all 3 decks, with 2 for Limit 2s and 1 for Limit 1s, playing a different deck each game in a single elimination best of 3 rounds. For the players competing, many would bring similar decks, with one-offs being Hero, Mayakashi, Vampire, Witchcrafter, Teller Knight, and Ritual Beast, 2 players each bringing Cyber Dragon, Gaia, and Shiranui, 3 bringing Triamid and Lunalight, 5 bringing TG, 6 bringing Thunder Dragon, 7 bringing Harpy, and a staggering 11 of the 16 bringing Onomat, recognizing that even with the emergency ban list, it was still the best deck in the format. The tournament would be won by Kisara, becoming the new world champion, using Thunder Dragon, Cyber Dragon, and a unique list known as Hero Flash, which aimed to stall out the game using various tools like Spiritual Beast Tamer Winda, Kiteroid, Battle and Boxer Veil, and many different power traps fueled by the free cards to use as discard cost to get into a turn where you could use Hero Flash to make a push for direct damage lethal. While all of this was well and good, the issue stood that the KCGT was in and of itself an absolute train wreck for the spectator side, as throughout the event there were major delays, broken skills, and even 2 separate disconnects occurring during the finals, showing just how poorly put together this year's event was, further contributing to the issues mentioned previously with the game's decline. Overall, the KCGT solidified the meta of the time and how nothing had changed in months at this stage. With the announcement of one final box and character before the era changed, all eyes turned to it for any kind of change to the status quo. Beginning on August 30th, 2021, For the Sake of the Family brought Trey to Duel Links. Trey's strategy was entirely focused around the Chronomaly monsters, primarily boosting them with the skill Gateway to the Another Dimension. No, that is not a typo, that is what the skill is called, which lets you send a monster from deck or extra deck to the graveyard to make all monsters on the field have that level, requiring a deck of Chronomaly monsters and an extra deck of Chronomaly and light number monsters. The strategy would be brought together by the mini-box release the very next day. Arts of Atlantis was the 6th and final mini-box of the Zexal Era, released on August 31st, 2021. This box was primarily focused on the Chronomaly monsters, bringing cards like Neberdisk, which adds a Chronomaly from deck to hand on summon and can special summon itself from grave if you only control Chronomalies, Crystal Skull, who could be discarded to search for a Chronomaly monster, Chateau Huyik, who can detach a material to make an opponent's monster's attack 0 that turn, and contribute a Chronomaly to pop an opponent's monsters whose attack is different from its original attack, and Atlantis, who equips a number from grave to itself on summon, gains half its attack, and can detach a material and send the equipped monster to grave to halve the opponent's life points, unable to go into the battle phase that turn. Chronomaly would see minor success as a rogue deck in the meta with this support, in addition to Trey's drop cards like Moai and Crystal Bones, both of which special summon themselves from hand, and Technology, which would banish a Chronomaly and grave to add one of the top 2 cards from your deck to your hand, sending the other to the grave, enabling plays with the skill for monsters like Atlantis, Force Focus, and Huyik. The other strategy receiving a boost here was Gimmick Puppets, who received Junk Puppet, which special summoned a Gimmick Puppet from grave, and Condolence Puppet, which sent Gimmick Puppets from deck to grave. They could be banished from grave to give a Machine Exceed immunity to card effect destruction as long as it remained on the field. This wave would bring more interest into Gimmick Puppets, but not nearly enough to see meta success. Other notable cards released here include Acid Golem, a 3000 attack rank 3, Kagemucha Knight, a rank 3 enabler that special summons itself from hand when you normal summon a level 3, and Gorgonic Guardian, a rock-locked rank 3 that can detach a material to make an opponent's monster's attack 0 and negate its effects, also able to destroy a 0 attack monster once per turn. This last card would actually be integral to boosting the meta viability of both Magnet Warrior and Triamid, giving them an exclusive Exceed that could be used to stabilize their end boards better. These changes overall were extremely minor at the time, leading into the KC Cup a week later. The 4th and final KC Cup of the Zexal Era ran from September 8th through the 19th of 2021, being a send-off of the dominant decks of the era. Decks with 1 or 2 top spots but no major representation overall included Blue Eyes, Goki, Hero, Mayakashi, and Witchcrafter. Tied for 7th place with 3 spots were Lunalight and Gaia, the former still going strong with the release of Tenki, and the latter making its first KC Cup appearance, as this was the first KC Cup held since its release, seeing a tech choice of Concentrating Current pick up play as a way to surprise an OTK with Spiral Spear Strike. Tied for 5th with 4 spots are Tech Genus and Ritual Beast, the former refocused on the Set Delta Excel build, and the latter seeing a rise in success thanks to Endless Trap Hell boosting its viability. And 3rd with 11 top spots was Cyber Dragon, seeing practically no changes since the last KC Cup finish. And 3rd with 12 top spots was Harpy, shifting back onto a 20 card build and now using Hysteric Party as a way to reflood the board and close out games, with most maxing out Swallow's Nest. And 2nd, with 20 top spots, was Thunder Dragon, showcasing its power in a metagame catered towards it, with 1st place Haru only playing this deck for their top spot. In first with 27 spots, unsurprisingly, was Automat, still maintaining its position as the best deck in the format despite its hits, thanks to the power of Automata play allowing the player to sculpt their plays each turn. This brings us to the end of the Zexal era, and on the cusp of a brand new era to the game around the corner, bringing not only new mechanics, but new changes to card releases, and potentially the biggest blow to Duel Links as a whole with the release of its new competitor. A big shout out and thank you to Prinrin, Ryza339, and all of my other patrons over on Patreon. If you'd like to see my videos a day early, consider supporting me on Patreon, link in the description below. If you like this video, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe below. It really does help me out. If you want more info for the behind the scenes for these, be sure to follow me on Twitter, check out my Twitch streams, or join my Discord server. All links are down in the description below. Thank you all again, and I'll see you next time.